Okay. The basic concept is we start from an explanation of everything starting from a point of whatever God is and what man's concept of God is, and how that moves over into human creation and religion, because they're both these man-made, uh, human creation of how man was made, and then religion, which is man-made. So, if that makes any sense. But, into religion, look into how it can be used, how it's used for information control, how it's just putting your own faith into something, putting the question of what is God, um, using it as a connection to something more than ourselves, asking the question, what are we? Religion can also be used as a keeper of secrets, that, the religious practices are ways of keeping knowledge from others, unless you understand the religion or you're one of the priests. Um, Existence beyond this physical life. One of the reasons why we have religion is because we're looking for what's going beyond. And it also helps us with a moral compass. And does it help to give some explanation to what our soul consciousness is? So we go on to the story of human creation, which I'm trying to figure a way to get into every major form of back history of human history. And so, looking at Asian legends of Taoism, Buddhism, ancestral legends of Native Americans, and this will also tie in with religion. Um, Indian cultures and their beliefs, Middle Eastern with Egyptians, Islam, Sumerian, and then the Sumerian going into the Anunnaki. Then South American with the Aztec, Incas, Mayas, and then how star people relate to all these different cultures, and how you can look at angels and demons, and how you can look at what we consider of aliens to be spirits, the Greys, Fae, transdimensional beings, species from another planet, or the Anunnaki, but that these otherworldly beings, if you will, are what these star people were from the human creation legends that then move into the Anunnaki legend, which is what I can come up with as the best basis for the creation of humankind, where there was the star people, the aliens that came down and they seeded themselves with the people of Earth here. I say people, whatever they were at the time, and that's that missing link of humanity is the genetic creation, which is what Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden were, is that creation story of humans on Earth from the Anunnaki, but then written out as biblical of becoming the Torah. But when you look at all the stories, you can see how the giants of old from Egyptian culture and other cultures around that area, the story of the Nephilim, of being the Anunnaki breeding with the crossbred beings. So it's genetically crossbreeding humanity, the Homo sapiens of the time on Earth, with the Anunnaki, so that they then, breed and form Nephilim. So the Nephilim are the next generation genetics, the giants of old, were the next generations of the star people, the alien Anunnaki, breeding with the red creations that they have made, similar to the movie Splice. So from there, you get into the Kabbalah basically being the knowledge from the Anunnaki that was handed down to their creations, but then was kept in secret from the rest of man to, not have the full understanding of this knowledge, which then also gets into plant medicines, and which then goes over into the witchcraft and spellcrafting, where you basically had this creation of religion from all these different cultures to be a doorway protector of the plant medicines that allowed a gateway for consciousness and the mind to then reach out to speak in other dimensions with, the remains of what is the Anunnaki. See, that's the thing. It's we don't have enough information yet to pin down what they fully were, what these aliens are, what these spirit beings that people see when they go and trip through plant medicines. It's all interconnected. So, from there, we go on of the Bible being canonized and created, and the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church creating Christianity. The Ark of the Covenant, that's one of those questionable things in there also of, it is believed that it was a ceremonial vessel for carrying some immense technology that the Anunnaki had left behind, and that it has been traveling around the world ever since as a form of energy coalescence. How to put it? A energy portal, I guess is the best way. I don't know. We'll get to that once we get into the writing. Then you have the division that the Torah created and Christianity, with putting separations between Yahweh and Lucifer and the God of above, sending his angel down below, and then God his son Yeshua rising back to heaven, and then Satan being that opposite mindset in between. But then there's the Christ consciousness, and so much that can get into what all that is. So that could be a whole book in itself. That's a whole chapter in itself too. But that's not the main religion. That's not the main story of everything. But that's what so many people are pushed and told. And that also then goes into balance, which in balance want to talk about the differences of balances of life, of how we're looking for the balance. That's a reason of religion, reason for studying psychology and sciences, to come to the balance in life. Balance between truth and lies, yin yang, love, fear, what karma is, good and evil, as above so below, positive and negative, and light and shadows. So, from the Catholic Church and the Crusades and what the Vatican was created for, has kind of shot off into what we now have as this control mechanism. And that's why I was talking about information control for religion. The Catholic Church was created for the information control. There's a lot of information coming out now that plant medicines and stuff were kept I'm having a vision from God, or I'm seeing God because I am in this mental state from the plant medicines that I've taken. And that the Catholic Church tried through the Crusades to push off all that evidence throughout the years of history, destroying paintings, destroying writings, collecting everything that would keep showing mankind. And that's, I feel some of the same reasons why we're pushing in the Middle East right now, is because it's been the control mechanism trying to get rid of any remaining religious text information, that's behind, that teaches these things to mankind, that the church has been trying to keep hidden. So, in the past 10,000 years then, from the movement on from the Anunnaki and then Christianity and the Catholic Church, you then start moving up into the secret societies, where you get sororities and fraternal orders, the Skull and Bone Society, and then you look where the Moloch and Baal worship through history from the beginning of time, and blood worship, black magic, sacrifice comes from, in all the different cultures, where in South America you had Incas, Aztecs, Mayans, where they would sacrifice and do blood rituals. And so what then became the Masonic orders have actually moved up from the time of antiquity, from the Torah and the Bible, when it was the information that was handed down, more so than the Kabbalah, but it was, I can't remember which angel it was, Michael. I think it was Michael handing down information to the Masons of the time that were building the temple. And so that the Masons, the Masonic order, then used that knowledge throughout history to kind of affect things, their path, their way. And that's why it's eventually, found then where you get to 1780s with Weishaupt and creating the Bavarian Illuminati. And so, is everyone that's part of the Masonic Order part of the Illuminati? No. The Illuminati is an inset within Masonic orders, but there's a majority of the Masons and Masonic orders that are then using their influence in the world to dictate what goes on. And that's where you then get into looking into the monarchy and how the Masons have infiltrated into the um, the royalty of England and other, principalities, and all the rich families too, the Rockefellers, Warburgs, Morgans, Rothschilds, Goldman Sachs, Carnegie Mellons. All those type of people were all people that were part of the Masonic orders, all helping each other out, of which then it moves into the only way that I could refer to it is the tentacles of the beast, where you have the high level organizations of all these rich elitists from the Masonic orders that are the International Cabal, that are the Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Grove, Edge Foundation, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, and then even into NASA, CIA, Mossad, and MI5, where those organizations work together with keeping a lot of information from mankind, but at the same time, anything that's new and relevant that comes out, they're able to keep what they see as their balance of the knowledge that man should have to what they feel, what they feel the knowledge of man should have to what the knowledge is available. There's so much more technology available, so much more understanding of how the world functions that common man is kept from because this control mechanism is trying to affect and tell us how we need to live our lives. So that's where you get into the American imperialism and Washington, D.C. after World War I and World War II, and the creation of the UN working towards the New World Order. There's a lot that believe it's between the Vatican, the monarchy in England, and Washington, D.C. that are the control arm mechanisms of who decides what goes on around the world. So, from looking at that, in what they are wanting to create the New World Order, we have two timeline possibilities that we can go towards. We can either go towards a timeline of control, or we can go to a timeline of freedom. Of which, in the timeline of freedom, what I foresee is that we can have an equal universal basic income for everyone that is fair and just, and I've always said a minimal for each person. Give them a small room with a kitchenette and a toilet and shower, your most basic apartment. Everyone is granted that, and everyone is granted enough money for the food that they need and to pay for their electric bill. And if you want more in life, if you want a fancy car, if you want a bigger house, if you want something more in life, then you'll go to the job, you'll do the extra work, you'll find that career that you enjoy to make those funds so that you can have the bigger and better if you so desire it. Those that don't desire that in life, they can then have just that basic that is given to them and enjoy life in, their basic ways. That it can be on the freedom of the individual to decide what they want for their life. Also, that homeopathic medicine will come back to the plant medicines, that it'll become a more open, free society where we can start using these plant medicines for ourselves again, like they used to in days of old, and not what they have. Will you please stop? And not what they have tried to keep on us, for the past. It's been like 100 years in this country of America, and it's influenced the rest of the world of this, policy against hallucinogens, against, homeopathic medicines. And so hopefully we can get past the idiocy of the control mechanism to get back to an open, free mechanism. Also with that, free interstellar travel. We keep talking about the limitations of what we're going to be doing, going to Mars or doing this. There's a lot of people believe that this technology is already here and that it's just been, in waiting. And if it gets to the point of the control mechanism moving ahead, we're looking at, Elysium, where it's this place up in the sky for the rich to have, and they have the wealth and the means to travel, but the lessers aren't able to. We need a free, open society where once that becomes available, that anybody can have that possibility to say, okay, well, before I die, I'm going to hop on that spacecraft, once before I go. Also, having free energy devices where we'll have more of solar panels, we'll have more of wind turbine energy. We'll be getting away from the coal and the fossil fuels and all the stuff that was used for financial gains and backing up a dollar that's disappearing. And then augmentation, where when you get into the control mechanism in a connected world, the connected world can be used for good and bad. We can have augmentation that can help us, but we can also have many things that can hurt us, which is the worst part. And then I always foresee that, in a timeline of freedom, it's a timeline that we're moving in love and living in abundance. Now, if we go to control, you're looking at a minimal universal basic income, the base of the base. Even if inflation goes, you're still just going to be stuck with whatever that base is. They'll incrementally, bump it up as much as possible. We'll be looking more into the social welfare score and cancel culture. Social welfare score like China has, and then just people being canceled from life and having, the ability to do things because of what social media says about them and what people think and feel about them, instead of just being based on, I mean, yes, it's kind of being based on the worth of their character, but it's pushing this agenda where everyone has to meet that same mold, and if you don't meet that mold, you'll be shamed out of the society. And then you also have the 5G, which they're talking internet for all, putting satellites up, and then having a one world digital reserve currency. So in this connected world, though, it's all for a control mechanism where the 5G will allow for a broader connection, the internet for all, with having, connectivity completely with everybody. If there becomes implemented tracking and tracing in a one world digital reserve currency, they can just shut that off whenever they want. And they can decide, okay, we're not going to allow you to have your funds, and you're going to have to fend for yourself. And we're going to be able to follow you wherever you go, and satellite image of every human living in the world. Which then would lead into World War III, of which there's already been so many talks between Russia, China, US, who knows, whatever could happen. But within it, there's been the talks of the Georgia Guidestones of having the world population being kept under 1 billion. So in the control mechanism, it would be killing off over half the world population so that they can have a better control on those that remain. And there's so many methods that could be done to do that. I thought COVID was possibly it. And then intelligence, and someone's intelligence and scientific knowledge is going to be more meaningful in the future to this control society than the welfare of all. So even though there might be, this invention that could keep everybody alive an extra 20 years and no longer have heart attacks, if they want the control, they're going to say that, well, we're going to keep the science for ourselves because we're the smarter ones. And if you have, if you're a lesser minded, lesser knowledge person, you're not going to be granted the same that the rest of us are. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, and then the intelligent and the elites play as gods. So that's basically what they're doing with the Tentacles of the Beast. Is you already have these groups: the Trilateral Commission, Bohemian Grove, Bilderberg Group, Edge Foundation, Council on Foreign Relations, where they are all ones of the elitists, the wealthy, the politicians, the like-minded individuals of that class that are using their wealth and power to try to influence and tell the rest of the world how they should live. And so I've seen that more as a fear-based mindset where you're keeping people controlled through the fear of everything that, could happen, and it's living in scarcity, whereas we need to move towards love and living in abundance. So along the way, in this moving into a new timeline possibility, we have the New Age now. And all this ties in together with the... I left out the whole thing with the the state of Israel, between the Vatican, monarchy, American imperialism, Washington, D.C., state of Israel creation after World War II, there's a lot of that ties into how all these groups moved, and that the Khazars and helped create this Judaism were actually non-Hebrew people, and that's what a lot of these these older families of money and influence, the Rockefellers, Warburgs, Rothschilds, are all older descendants of this Khazar lineage that created the state of Israel. Anyways, so then you get into freedom mindset to the New Age beliefs, whereas the New Age beliefs is not to say that it's a one world religion, but it's coming to this over-grasping understanding of what the human creation religion is, so that we are now using the plant medicines and everything to open up our pineal glands through meditation and opening our third eye, if you will, to understand that there is this consciousness connection to otherworldly forces, be that, aliens, whatever you want to refer to them as. There's another spiritual realm out there, and that's what spirituality comes to, and that's what mankind has been trying to use religion for, to basically define what God is, when the essence of it all, when you combine all the knowledge and wealth that we've had through all these years, is to understand that God is zero-point source energy. God is just the concept of everything collective, that we're one collective consciousness, and that we're all a bit and a piece of God, experiencing this life here on earth, so that, this collective consciousness just knows everything. I mean, there's no purpose or meaning or anything behind it, just other than it is experience. And then you can also get in the question of, our angels and demons also these aliens? And that goes back to the Anunnaki and the star people, and we'll tie it in all together. Of which point then you get to now, in this present day New Age, talking about moving in planetary shifts, the age of Aquarius, where there's more galactic energy is the best way to put it, but there is more of a field of light energy that's coming and hitting into Earth now that hasn't been there before. And that's what the moving into the age of Aquarius is. That's what this New Age is that we're finally moving back from this control mechanism that we've had, and we're moving towards a new open mindset, where people can finally, and this is where we'll get into science, where people can finally get more into the understanding of how everything in the galaxy affects us as our being here on Earth. And it's not just the sun rays, and it's not just the pole of the moon, but that it's everything throughout the whole of the galaxy. So, the helpers along the way, there's many different cultures that talk about, they talk of those to come. So past generations that refer to, in this time of Great Awakening, that you will have those that will know, help lead, help teach. I can't remember which Native American culture, Hopi, I think it was, talked about the Rainbow Warriors, where at this point in time there would be a generation that would come from all races and cultures across the earth that would come together to help lead mankind into the new earth. There's the belief that indigo children and star seeds and way showers were our people that are here on earth, that their consciousness is from beings from other worlds, that it's not consciousness of an earthbound consciousness. I mean, we're all conscious and we're all everywhere, but the way our consciousness moves, the way it's connected to God, that there are these higher knowledge beings. That's when you get to ascended masters. That's what I forgot to put there. But where you had Yeshua and Buddha and Muhammad and all these people that came to a higher spiritual understanding while they were living their life here on Earth. And then you get even further into the Galactic Federation of Light, where that's the one thing that I have no proof for, but it fits with everything, that if there is more out there in the universe, if there are more intelligent life forms, if there are other intellectual beings besides ourselves, this conscious collective consciousness that we have throughout the universe, there are other beings from other collectives that understand that their life is connected to our life, and that they want to assist us in our moving forward into this new age. And then that's moving into the communal collective consciousness living, where it's understanding that we are all one being under, this collective 0-point source energy of what is God. Is we are all a piece and a part of that. We are, look at it as a human body. We are all a blood cell, if you will, in this collective consciousness. And that when we can start to love one another and be here for one another, understanding that our brothers and sisters are us, it can create a whole new world. So we're going through many planet-wide shifts right now, which a lot of people question, that we could have a mass extinction event. We worry about global warming. There's the whole global consciousness as a whole shifting, possibility of a pole shift, and then also solar flares. And so these are plausibilities of what could possibly happen, that, if you look at global consciousness and you look at communal collective consciousness living, that what we create by our thought process, that if we could harmonially commune together in the same thoughts, to not think for the control mechanism, to not contemplate towards the shifts that could wreak havoc on us, but that we use our collective consciousness to move towards the new age, into a new spirituality, so much can be different. And that's where we come to, how do we go about that? Well, we look at the science of it all and how it all ties together with the psychology of the human mind and what is the soul and consciousness. Yeah. So in science, we'll talk about quantum physics, and quantum teleportation, the Montauk experiment, and how that affects into time travel with past life and future life. Consciousness travels, not physical bodies. So one of my theories for time travel is that you can time travel, but it's mentally. It's like the butterfly effect, where you're traveling in the mind, into the mind of someone in a different period of time, and that it's not your physical body leaving from here to another place. Quantum leap, yeah. Didn't even think about that. But yeah, basically that concept. So then quantum physics, you also talk about the slit experiment, where, can we change something with our mind by how we view it? You also then get into sound and frequency resonance, talking about the toroid field around the body, different wavelengths, and how music and the Schumann resonance affects us as a whole, and just sound frequency in the body. We don't fully, scientifically has not fully explained what is available with that, which goes into electricity and electromagnetism also, into sacred geometry, and then timeline and dimension jumping when you get into multiverse theory, that we live in a simulation, causes the Mandela effect. You can jump different timelines and dimensions. And all of this leads into of how I was talking about blood magic and witchcraft and spellcasting, because these have been, how do I want to put it? They've been pushed away in society through science as being hogwash, because there's more reality and truth in what they are and how they affect us, that all these secret societies have been keeping hidden. The religions of the world have been keeping the understanding hidden of how much our DNA and blood can be affected or used, and then how much that can be used in witchcraft and spellcrafting. So with DNA and blood magic, we're talking about DNA
genetic and mathematical encoding. So that gets into where I'll discuss about the singularity. And then you can talk about generational curses, blood oaths, and inherited traits, and then how that can be used for blood magic and witchcraft and spellcrafting, which spellcasting is where the term spelling came from, where you're creating a spell by writing in your words, of which witchcraft was wordcraft. And so your words are meaningful because of that collective consciousness. It's your belief and intention of what you put out. The more someone believes in magic, the more a magic spell is going to affect someone, because it's that mental output that you have. And then how that all interconnects with the plant medicines and consciousness, and then the energy connection that we have with the earth, and how the plant medicines give us that connection to the earth and different levels of consciousness.
And then those different levels of consciousness then get us into psychology. And the main topics to talk about in psychology are social engineering, well, the human brain in itself, and how the brain, what we know of how the brain functions, how the brain works, and then how social engineering is used with MK Ultra and predictive programming to affect the mind. And definitely discussion between Bernays creating social engineering and Freud talking about the ego in modern day psychology, and just how all this, questions of what is our soul, what is our consciousness? Is consciousness the human brain and the mind, or is consciousness what our soul is, and is what our entity is? How does this all I'm going to wrap it all together to try to explain how it all intermingles and how it all unifies the sciences with the psychology, with the religions, to bring balance in life, to understanding how our collective consciousness works as being a piece and part of the 0 point source energy. Yeah, something like that.